Good morning and welcome to the programme. Hope you're having a lovely Tuesday. It is very nice weather out there. I was out walking the dogs this morning at 6:30 down on the Strand and Passage, and I'll tell you it was fairly cold. That northwesterly wind, as we say, it would cut right through you. Our text and WhatsApp number 083 3333 975. You can call Audrey on 051 846 123. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and let us know your thoughts on some of the subjects we had and are having. The Daft report is due out. It is out. 10% of rental stocks, an increase in a 5.5% price growth in rents around Waterford. We're going to be talking to some auctioneers about that. We want to know your thoughts and your views and how it's affecting you as somebody who's trying to rent, or if you're a landlord, let us know also what is happening. We had a text in yesterday from a TD to say the impression given by David Heffernan yesterday that the psychiatric unit, the Department of Psychiatry issues were an isolated unit is incorrect. Seems to be more than just an isolated overcrowding there, and people want more investigations into that. Now we're also going to be talking to Colm Williamson, the man, one of the men behind the fabulous Waterford Whispers news. He's coming on in a little while, and we'll hear from Jim Nolan ahead of the opening night, the gala opening night at the Garter Lane of the Red Iron play. Now, we will also have some major news on the pantomime. You know it, don't you? No, you don't. Yes, you do.
Full control will not be mine until I banish that idiot girl Snow White from my side. Oh, how I hate the very sight of her. And isn't she ugly? Oh, yes, she is. Oh, yes, she is. Oh, yes, she is.
All together now.
Oh, shut up, you snotty-nosed little mingers. Oh, you make me sick.
We're going to be talking to Wayne Brown at around 11:45 with some big news regarding the pantomime. There are massive waiting lists for tickets for the pantomime. Now, did anybody see any of the programmes on RTE this week? Started yesterday regarding climate change. RTE on climate, and well done to the national broadcaster for doing a series on this. Gerald Fleming is one of the people that was behind the programme last night. Very interesting programme about climate change. I'm going to talk to him now. The phone line isn't brilliant, but we'll see how we get on. Gerald Fleming, good morning.
Morning to you, Damien.
Thank you very much for joining us. Are you in Wexford this morning, or are you in Dublin?
In Dublin this morning, Damien, yeah, and heading off fairly shortly to foreign spots.
Lovely. And what are you up to these days since you retired or left to change careers from Met Éireann?
Yeah, I'm actually quite busy. I've become involved in a number of projects in Southeast Asia, which is where I'm heading now later on today, in terms of helping some of the Met services there to modernise and build up their capacity. And as we know, that part of the world is very vulnerable. A lot of people living close to the poverty line, a lot of people living in very low-lying areas, and the potential for death and destruction when we get severe weather event there is multiples of what we would likely to be getting in Ireland. So a lot of effort going into improving the Met services and the support services there to make the people more resilient to climate change and the increased likelihood of severe weather.
A lot of people, as far as we know, the ratings were high on the programmes last night, and it's fascinating topics. Can I just go straight to the point in terms of something you raised consistently in your programme? The language and the ability or inability of people to relate to what we're talking about. We talk about a thing called a carbon footprint.
Yep.
Do you think that even that phrase, carbon footprint, is inadequate?
I think people have a very vague idea of what it is. I mean, my own idea of what it is probably vague too. We know that we burn fossil fuels, in our grates at home if we're burning coal or oil, if we have oil, central heating or whatever. And every time we drive a car that's not an electric car, we burn it. But even if we drive electric cars, we're probably burning it because the electricity has been generated through fossil fuels further back up the line. So we know that we're burning carbon dioxide, carbon-based fuels, and that releases more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Trying to get a handle on how much of it we're releasing through our individual actions, I suppose, and then working from that to how we can reduce that, which to a certain extent we can do ourselves, changing our lifestyles, but to a significant extent we also need a lot of good policy and good support from government and local authority level to help us live more carbon-free lifestyle.
Yeah, I I still think it's very inadequate. I was thinking about it this morning, and I was thinking something like personal carbon pollution, PCP, because carbon footprint sounds like something like walking on the beach. It brings up a completely inadequate appraisal of how serious we're talking about. So the clothes we wear have a carbon footprint. The phone we use and where it came from and all that goes into that. And I think this idea of people having created and I suppose polluting the atmosphere personally by so many tons of carbon every year, it just still doesn't compute. I think there's a major, major issue there with how the message has been put across or not put across.
Well, certainly, and I would say that the profession that I'm in, I suppose, meteorology and particularly the front-facing end of it, where we talk to people and so on, over the last 30 or 40 years, I've given lots of talks about climate change, but clearly we haven't been using the right language or getting the story across because we haven't effectively changed very much in terms of people's behaviour, and we certainly haven't changed anything in terms of the amount of carbon dioxide being released into the atmosphere, which is still increasing at the rate it always was. So, globally we have a problem. We have to explain more clearly to people so that they understand the nature of this problem. And it's only when people understand the nature of the problem that the politicians will, if you like, follow suit with policies, because politicians will only go as far as the electors will allow them to go up to a point anyway. So there's still a major job of public education there. I absolutely agree with you there.
Are you a political animal, Gerald Fleming? Because ultimately, you've touched on it there, politics comes into it. We have to call out politicians that, for example, in Brazil, are cutting down and continue to cut down large swathes of forests. You're talking about Southeast Asia. The same happened in Indonesia. We're looking at maps that NASA produced in the last 30 years compared to now, and the deforestation in many parts of the world is horrendous.
It absolutely is, and you're quite right. We have to call out the political systems that allow and encourage that to happen, but equally we have to see to what extent is that happening because our Western lifestyle, which is become the aim for people in the more developing countries, to what extent are we giving them that example, or indeed through the purchases we make or the way we have organised our economic systems. We're encouraging people to do that. I mean, people will do what they need to do to keep their families fed, and you can't blame them for that. But if the only way to do that is to burn down forests, then that's what they'll do too. Now, I know this; it's worse. It's not as simple as that, and in many cases there are strong political and economic drivers, if you like, behind these actions, and we do have to call those out. But we also have to see how can we make a world in which people can aspire to, a good life for themselves and their children without destroying the atmosphere.
Yes, but in trying to get to that world, there are steps that have to be taken, and every small step, if you're involved in local community issues, if you do one good thing a year and develop a community centre or a playground, you do one thing a year, you do one good thing. Let's hit the brass tacks here on this in terms of 33% of carbon emissions, greenhouse gases in Ireland are related to agriculture. The government knew, and the state knew, by getting rid of milk quotas a number of years ago, the amount of dairy cows in Ireland was going to grow exponentially. We now have so many cows producing methane. How do you, you're living in Wexford, you're from Wexford, how do you think about, what do you think about that?
Well, I suppose on the policy level, it just shows what we've seen particularly in our government and in other governments, that there's no joined-up thinking between one department and another. So one department can be pushing a certain policy and another department can be doing something which effectively undermines that policy. And that's not good enough. We need to be smarter than that. We need to be more clever than that. And we need to have that sort of whole-of-government approach. We see it in some parts of the Irish political system, which is not a bad system by any manner or means, but it has its failings, and I think that was one of them. When we look at farming, I'm hesitant to blame farmers. I mean, farmers don't have an easy time of it, and beef farmers in particular are not exactly rolling in lots of money from what they're making out of beef farming. But in a sense, the food system, as we know it, is broken. We're the people, farmers are needed to produce food, and we're the people who consume food, those of us who are not farmers, as well as the farmers, obviously. But we're aiming for this cheap food, if you like, which is fine when you go down to the supermarket, but if it doesn't produce something that the farmer can live on, then how is the farmer going to do anything more than scratch out a living as best they can? We need to aim more for quality rather than quantity, I believe, when it comes to meat. I think there will be a place for meat in the diet of the future, but probably a lot less of it, but of the highest quality.
And I know you stayed away from dairy farmers there, criticising them, because effectively dairy farmers are the ones that have benefited from the changes in milk quota legislation and rules and regulations. And beef farmers, you're right, beef farmers have had a tough time. Plastics, do you think the government should ban the selling of goods in major supermarkets, for example, or at least look at it? There may be problems in terms of the legality of such legislation, but the idea, you buy 3 mushrooms and the mushrooms come in a blue plastic box, and there's in a tray, which and then you've got plastic cellophane on top of that, and you just think, this is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's unnecessary, because we can have cardboards now which are perfectly compostable and can be recycled much more easily than plastic. And we saw with the plastic bag tax, many, many years ago, that when government introduced the policy, people were actually keen to comply with it. It wasn't probably for saving the 22 cent or whatever in the tax, but people quickly switched to bringing their baskets or their bags for life or whatever. I think people are ready for that change now when it comes to packaging in supermarkets, that if the government were to take a lead on that, I think people would applaud them, and the supermarkets would have a little bit of work to do, if you like, in changing, or more to the point, probably their suppliers would have a bit of work to do. But it would happen, and we'd be in a better place.
Are you, do you get angry about this?
I get, I suppose, a bit depressed. No, depressed is not the right word, but
you get sad about it, yeah.
A bit sad about it, yeah. I mean, naively, perhaps, 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe it was of the view that as scientists, we explained the problem, it would be understood, and the political stroke economic system would rationally change, if you like, to take account of that and deal with it. And clearly that hasn't happened. And if we look at the way politics has evolved in the last 5 to 10 years, maybe not so much in this country, but in other countries abroad, you can see that it's certainly not driven by rationality or the good of the overall common people or whatever. There's much darker forces driving it and funding it, indeed, I think. And that does not augur well for society and politics getting on top of this particular problem within our democratic system. I mean, the odd thing is, if there's one country giving a lead, it's probably China, because China is making great strides in developing photovoltaic cells, electric cars, all that sort of thing. But China is not a democracy, so the challenge is how are we going to deal with this in a political sense while retaining our democratic structures.
I see, without plough-mossing, Gerald Fleming, I see a role for you in this. Like, you're very well received by the Irish public. You have a broadcasting experience. You're very well got. You're no longer tied in with a semi-state, I suppose, civil service approach to life. You could become a very important person in the next 10 years as an angry leader for change.
All I can do is try and explain, things as I see it, as both as a meteorologist, I suppose, and as a citizen. And as you say, I worked for 37 years for Mid-Air, which is part of the civil service, and enjoyed every one of them. Now, I don't have to concern myself, I suppose, with when you're a civil servant. Obviously, you can't speak out against government policy, and I think that's absolutely correct. That as a way to behave, but I don't have those constraints on me. But having said that, I recognise this is a problem not just for the people at the top of the political and decision-making tree, it's a problem for all of society. So every layer in society, and this comes to communities, it comes to local authorities, they all have an important part to play. So it's trying to get everything working in unison, and every layer playing its part, I think, will be the challenge.
You're not going to run for politics, are you?
No. It's a tough on train.
There could be a seat there in Wexford for you in the next general election, huh?
There'll be plenty of people scrapping for that, as you know. And no, that's one arena I won't be entering into. In fact, what I'm doing at present, working with colleagues, I suppose, in the meteorological business in Southeast Asia, and working to help them to help their communities and citizens who really, objectively speaking, are far more vulnerable in that region than Irish people and Irish society. I find that very satisfying, actually.
Gerald Fleming, thank you very much, and try not to increase your carbon footprint too much in flying over to Southeast Asia and over there for the next while.
That's absolutely an unfortunate necessity at the moment, but however, we'll do our bit, as you say, to try and keep that to a minimum.
Gerald, thanks very much for that. And sorry about the hiss on the line there, folks. I don't know what the problem was with that. And thanks very much to Gerald for talking to us. The Winking Weatherman column. The Winking Weatherman.
Yeah. What a great guy.
Good guy, isn't he?
I miss him off the TV.
Yeah, the little wink.
Yeah. Hello there, and a very good evening to you.
Very good. And he did the wink at the start, and then he got to the end. He did the wink at the end. He did, you know. Do you ever do this competition now, or ever that a competition that you kind of have a think, who's going to read the weather tonight? No?
No.
Our lads do it in the house, and it's crazy, you know. They like Jerry best, but who's it going to be? Who's it going to be?
Is it going to be Nuala? Or it was the woman with the dress. She always has the cool dresses on.
Oh God, Joan. Yeah. She was a fashion icon for a while. Lots of talk about her style of dresses. All right, Colin Williamson, thanks for coming in to us. We are going to be talking about a little whisper in the news in a second. Okay. Now, welcome back to the programme. Send in your texts and comments, please. Tom says, if we go on treating the earth as if there's no tomorrow, there will be no tomorrow. Damien, the HSA building on the Cork Road, no recycling bins, tons of plastic bottles going in to landfill. Damien, I'm wondering how many listeners got a letter recently from Quality Recycling telling them that all rubbish will now be collected one day every 2 weeks instead of every week. This person says that carbon footprint tells you a lot about carbon footprint. I don't know. We'll ask people about that. Colin Williamson, thank you for joining us this morning.
Oh, thanks for having us on. Yeah.
Waterford Whispers News. Just remind people, how long are you going now?
Oh, 10 long years. I started in 2009. From my apartment in Tramore, and so it's going as a business 5 years. So it was a slow kind of start, you know. So we had a 5 year. I was on my own for 5 years writing it. So it was more kind of local stuff I was doing, more local Waterford based, Tramore based kind of satire, and then kind of realised things started taking off. You know, I did a story on North Korea landing a man on the sun. That took off, went worldwide. And the site just, the traffic, since even today, there's still I looked at my phone today, there's 70 people still reading that at any one time, that story. So it kind of goes to show, you know, it was a massive story. It was like...
Do you know what the overall figures for that are?
On the site, about, I think it was 3.5 million, but other sites took the story, and there was one site called, I can't remember the name, but that's where it went viral. They basically took it... put a little link at the bottom, and I'd say there's millions of views on that one. You know, I'd say Kim Young read it himself.
And do you get money from people reading that online?
How it works is if you go onto our site, you'll see a little banner ad. It's a little square advert, and how we make money is people would click on that. So you would get probably 1% out of. So say we have 1.5 million readers a month, so 1% would click on that. And every click then would cost, say, 20, 30 cents. But over the years, that kind of model has died. You know, it has died in the last 2-3 years. It's based on Google AdSense. It's based on Facebook's own ad network. So since Trump came along, it's kind of just declined. The whole kind of...
Yeah, tell us about this now. So in the last, your reach, for people that don't know, you have a Facebook presence, you have a website, but putting stuff out there. And a lot of the strength of the business is based on what's called reach.
Yeah, reach.
So what is reach? So
reach is the amount Facebook or any social media allocates to your posts. So our reach is quite phenomenal. Like we're the most engaged publisher in Ireland because we're satire. With satire, you get a lot of engagement because, you know, people starts debates and that kind of thing, and they go into the comments. So our reach is pretty good. But what happens is, you know, a lot of people kind of share our stories. They would share the post without actually clicking in. So you get the headline shared. You get a lot of engagement on Facebook, but where we want the engagement is obviously on the site. We want people to click through, and that's quite hard. You know, we do get 1.5 million readers, but we reach about 10 million people a week on Facebook. That's huge, you know, and you think, whoa, 10 million, you should be making money off that. No, it doesn't work like that. You know, we rely on the ads. We rely on we're basically chasing traffic for ads for advertisers, and that's what we've been doing since we've been set up. You know, so now I'm.
And in the last 2 years, what has changed?
What's changed is Trump came to power, and Cambridge Analytical controversy with Facebook. And what Facebook did then was, with all this kind of backlash, they cut everyone's reach, and they cut our reach, cut across the board, every publisher in half. So, say we would have had 2-3 million readers in 2017. This is when everyone, I think, online was at their peak. It was crazy. Like, I mean, Facebook just went, if that was good, let it off, you know. But now it's like they've turned the tap down a bit.
And how were they able to do that, or what did they do?
It's an algorithm. So their current algorithm is based on engagement on the posts. So if you do well in one post, say if I posted an article and it did well, your next post would get allocated a bit more reach because you're now building a reputation of, you know, good quality content, and that's how it works. So that, you know, we're okay with that. But the thing is, the money side of things, like the revenue side, where, you know, we'd normally make money, that's gone, you know, and that's due to all the issues, as I said, like Trump, you know, the whole fake news phenomenon, you know, the Russian hacking, all that kind of stuff. So it all affects publishers and businesses. So,
is there is there something funny in that? Is there something strange in that the idea of Trump giving out about fake news has affected one of the greatest?
Well, I think it's everyone. It's affected.
But ye, as a company a satire, let's not call it fake news. Let's call it satirical comedy.
Yeah. Which we are. We, you know, a lot of people go, "Oh, how are we affected by the fake news?" You know, clampdown with Facebook, but Facebook didn't just attack fake news or alternative. They have attacked everyone, as in, like, they've cut everyone's reach, and that's the sad thing about it, you know. Now they do recognise us as satire. We like, I've been advising Facebook's HQ in California on satire and dark humour. They've approached me and said, help us, we don't know what we're doing.
Are they giving you a few bob for it?
We're in negotiations for consultancy fees.
So you're like one of these hackers that the company, the IBMs, will bring in to say, how, if you were going to hack us, how would you hack us? You're the satirical guy to go in there and say,
I suppose
there's something ironic in that. I think of it.
There is
a Vega song coming out.
But they're very good lately. Like, you know, up until, say, last year, we had no contact with Facebook, and I don't think anyone had. I mean, it was a very, just like Google, a very kind of faceless organisation. If you're on our end of, you know, business, which is, you know, publishing and whatever, but they've assigned us in the last year a media manager. You know, they've reached out with the, you know, helping them with satire, and it's good to see that, you know, they recognise us and they're not going to just one day go, right, goodbye, you know.
And what are they asking you regarding satire?
They've shown me some stuff from questionable satire sites in India and at various other places, and basically it's like, is this satire? No, that's satire. Could be satire. Is that satire? You know,
they want to know if it's funny.
Yeah, they want to know if you know, they want to get my opinion on, you know, where. Because it is a tough it's a tough thing to judge, especially when you're dealing with lots of different cultures, pop cultures, and, you know, say something in India, if it was read here, would take offence, whereas there it wouldn't. And with ourselves, a lot of the stuff that we do, we have an Irish voice, and we're quite loose-lipped when it comes to curse words and all that kind of thing, and even the language itself, we can be quite brutal. So. That can, as they said, that can offend someone in America, whereas, you know, no one in Ireland would complain, and that's just the nature of the beast. So they're trying to figure it out themselves. And is
this, do you think, part of Facebook realising that all the mistakes they've made and kind of forget about that, we won't need to deal with that, and there's a change? Oh,
I think there is a big change. Like talking with the media manager, like he's saying, you know, it's incredible the way they're really starting to kind of go, right, we better start paying attention to publishers, because that's our only kind of stream right now. You know, if we, you know, if we mess up the publishers, where are we? We're in big trouble as a business because they do make money off advertising and they do make money off publishers.
Could you see yourself working for Facebook at some stage?
I could see myself consulting with them, for large amounts of money. But we'll see how that goes.
So with this in mind, you've you had to lay off staff in the last few years. You've only how many of you working for you at the minute?
We've 4, so there's 2 full-time, myself included, and Carl, and then 2 part-time, Jerry McBride and Alan McCabe, who's our web guy here.
And things are very tight.
Things are tight,
as you said to me, you didn't take wages last year.
No, I had to cut my own wage last year because of the crunch basically of Facebook and the traffic, and had to lay off my own fiance, but she's fine now. She has a job somewhere else.
What's her name?
Ali.
Hello, Ali.
If she's listening, hello.
You're still engaged?
We're still engaged, yeah.
Any date fixed?
Not yet, no.
Don't announce it here now.
No.
Go on.
No, don't pressure me.
It's got very warm in here all of a sudden, hasn't it? And how did she take that?
She understood, obviously. She's
get the union in or anything, no?
No. I know, she was good. She took it well.
Strike on here.
She had to. It was tough. Yeah, it was tough. So
because that leads me in directly to what you're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're looking at doing now, and thanks for coming in to talk to us, what you're doing now is you're looking at trying to monetize, trying to make money out of what you have at present. How are you going to do that? So
we've launched a subscription for €5 a month, and nothing will change with the site. Everyone will still get the same content. We put out about 5-6 articles a day, 6 days a week. So that will still continue. What we're offering now is video content, all bonus content. Like we'll be doing interviews with our partners in Europe. So we're partnered up with all the European satire sites and that. And we're looking into a podcast, and there'll be lots of new material on the feed, on the subscription feed. So we have it on Facebook fan subscriptions for €5, and on Patreon then, if a lot of people don't want to use Facebook these days. So we have Patreon, which is, again, $5, which works out about the same. And
I presume you've done a business case analysis on this.
Yeah, well, we would meet up with all the satire guys every year. Say
that's good fun.
There's a bunch of introverts around the table. It's like very nerdy and talking about very serious issues.
Who's the most satirical?
Yeah. No, it's quite competitive too. And I'd done that story first. And it's great because we get all the business models together. Like the Dutch are very good at what to do.
That was a Dutch accent, was it? Yeah.
I don't know what that was. The Germans were very good as well. They're huge, actually. The German lads.
They're very satirical. They're good at the old satire.
Really good at it, and it's really well done. And
who's the worst at it?
Who's the? I better not say
Americans.
We'll say the Americans.
Generalise.
So we're friends with News Stump in the UK as well, and it's just good to be friends with all these people and to get advice on the business end of it. So they went the subscription model 2 years ago.
And they're making money out of it.
Yeah, they're saying like they should have done it. At the start. So,
because some people would question: is there enough satire? If there are enough people interested in satire alone, you may have to have a broader gambit of stuff. But if it's just satire, will people pay $5 a month? But the business model you're looking at, you think they will?
Oh, they are. Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of sign-ups just yesterday. Like we launched yesterday, so we've already 110 sign-ups in a day, which is good. Like if we got 20 every day after that, I'd be really happy. I suppose the goal
for the wedding.
Yeah. The goal would be the goal would be to get 1,000.
This is the only reason.
That's all it is.
Because the wedding's not going to go ahead if you don't. Ali, you're listening to this, yeah?
That's it. Yeah.
The goal would be to get how many?
I'd say if we got 1,000 subscribers, that would be great. That would solve every issue we have, and like we've been working quite hard with all the video content. So we have a ton of video content. All news reports, proper actors, and we have news reports from Westminster. Like we've gone full hog with this. So it's well worth €5.
Tell us about what's happening in Tramore, about the night in...
So as I said, we're 10 years. We're 10 years in the business.
Congratulations.
So I've never had a staff, kind of do or celebrate at WWN. So I've decided to raise money for Pieta House. And I've managed to get Brezzy and the Blizzards in, TPM, who are an up-and-coming hip-hop group. And then I have Kevin McGarn, comedian. I have Hugh Cooney, comedian. Tony Cantwell. We have Dean Jacob as well. He'll be floating around doing some mentalist kind of magician stuff. I've session heads. I have Clinkers there. So Clinkers is going to be there. And I have Bill Badbody. So Bill will also be there doing news reports. So it'll be good fun.
Where and when?
It's in the Ritz Bar, Tremor, and tickets can be found on waterfordwhispersnews.com/Pieta House. And you can find the tickets there. They're €25. Everyone's invited. They're going really fast. So if you want to get into the Ritz, see the Blizzards, see all these great acts.
And when is it? November, December?
It's on the 5th of December, which is a Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah. So get Friday off. Yeah.
Get Friday off. Yeah, you have the articles written the day before.
Oh, we will. Yeah. Week.
Colin, listen, thanks very much for coming into us. Good luck with it. And we might talk to you in the new year, see how things are going.
Yeah.
And really appreciate it. And good luck with your event as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Any stories for today you want to tell us about? Any satirical stories? Give me one.
What do we have today? Oh, God. I can't say. You'll have to go to the site.
Marty Morrissey. Good luck. Now, let us know what you think about the items we've had on the programme so far. Some people are texting in and ringing in 051 846 123. Tony phoned to say he watched the programme last night. He thought it was a load of alarmist, scaremongering nonsense. There you go, Tony. Scaremongering, alarmist nonsense. We will take more texts and comments in a few minutes. Somebody went to see the Red Iron play last night. The preview, it was absolutely brilliant, says this person. But an issue about mobile phones. I'll come to that in a minute. Firstly, we're going to talk to Harriet. We have been talking in the last few days about the BRCA gene, and Harriet's going to tell us her story about her husband's family being ravaged by the gene and cancer. Harriet, good morning.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm not too bad at all, thank you, Damien.
Good. Thanks for contacting us and being in touch. You heard the lady, Catherine, on the programme talking about the BRCA2 gene, and what did you think when you heard her?
It actually stirred me very much in the sense that I have this within my family, and it stirred up a lot of feelings, and I thought, well, I think maybe some more of the public in Waterford and probably outside, if we get people listening to WLR outside Waterford City,
yes,
that need to be very aware of this and to not let it slip into the background. Do something about it. Go get tested.
Go and get tested.
Yeah.
So tell us about your own situation or your own story, Harriet.
I married into a family of 4 brothers. One of them happened to be a twin, the guy I married. In September 2013, one of my brothers-in-law died from having had a stroke. But before this, he had suffered with bowel cancer and been given the all clear. He also had a heart condition. My husband died in December, 3 months later. He died having had lung cancer and a heart condition. My second brother-in-law, he died 2 years ago from cancer, and there's just one of those 4 boys remaining at the moment who, as far as I know, did not actually have the test done on himself.
That's just awful, isn't it?
It is. It does knock you for 6 in a family of, where there's just 4 boys. They lost their mother from cancer about 35 years ago, and their dad died 60 years ago from massive heart condition. So you had those 2 illnesses, passed down through the genes to 3 out of the 4 guys. In the sense that how this came about was the brother-in-law that died in September, his son was away for a little break, and when he came home, he had discovered a lump under his arm. His wife insisted get it checked. It turned out to be that he was diagnosed with male breast cancer. On the 5th of December, he had most of his chest removed, and because he's a very on-the-ball scientific guy, he decided he'd have his bloods tested because his dad had died. We can't really say from cancer at that stage, but he had been connected with it. And yet here was his uncle going to die a few weeks later in December. So he had it done, came back positive. He was instructed then to have his sisters tested. 3 of his 5 sisters all proved positive. His eldest and youngest sister escaped the gene. One of the daughters in my stepchildren, she proved to have it. We didn't rightly know about the older brother of the family until he died recently, and it was proved he died from cancer. So the 4 girls had to have total hysterectomies, mastectomies, lymph nodes, ovaries, everything removed. And God, I suppose, is good in one sense that those girls all have had their families. I know they're all sort of young children, but when they get to be 18, they've got to have their children all checked to see if they've passed the gene on. Now, I do know that the girls are going to be monitored, as is my nephew. They've all got to be monitored occasionally just to check that things are going their way and they're not sort of struck by the disease. It's hard to take it in that it's out there. And, each day you're sort of waiting to maybe get that awful phone call to say, I'm sorry, I've got it back. I don't know where to go. I just have to...
Yeah, it's definitely something that you feel, if somebody has any relative that has the gene, that you think they should be tested. Is that it?
Oh, they must be. They must be. And presently, I have a very good friend, and I've actually asked her to do this. She was diagnosed with cancer about 7 years ago, breast cancer. She got through it. She was given the all clear. And sadly, she has the darn disease back again. And not long after she was diagnosed for the second time, her sister has a different type of cancer going on. Now, I have spoken with my friend and her sister, and I've asked them to please go and get the gene test done because they have children, and probably down the road, if they don't go and have the test done to see if it is the gene, because their dad had died from cancer, so that automatically put me on an alert situation with them to try and get this done. And I would ask anybody that happens to be listening, if there is more than one person in a family that dies from cancer, they definitely should get themselves checked.
How does this make you all feel, Harriet? How does it make you feel regarding our health system and our approach to life?
Well, for a start, I think that our health system here is totally inadequate. I mean, I know the problems we have here in the county where I live with what's going on at our local hospital. They're overrun with patients. They don't have enough staff, qualified staff. They may have a lot of people for in-house keeping and admin and stuff like that, but they're definitely down on, the profession that we need. But they're not taking enough notice of us in Dublin. I think we're actually being classed as nearly, I know this is a horrible description, a third world county in the 26 counties, because we seem to be getting put on the back foot all of the time. And logically, and thinking about it properly, we are, after all, the oldest city on this island, but we're treated as if we don't matter. Our health is absolutely, for all of us that have got reasonably good health, we are to be blessed. But the amount of people out there that are in dire straits with, whether it's from cancer or heart issues and other illnesses, maybe psychiatric illnesses and everything, they leave an awful lot to be desired. Our health system is absolutely dire, in my opinion, and I don't know if there's anybody capable to try and rectify it. If they go down the road to rectify it, it means they'll turn around, they'll waste thousands and thousands and thousands of euros changing all of their headings on their paper because they may not want to be called the HSE anymore. They did that, wasted all that money years ago, changing from the SEHB or whichever area you were in. So I don't know where their heads are when they're actually wasting money on things like that. They need to put it into more nurses, more doctors, give the units to the hospitals, and especially calling out for the county of Waterford. End of. I just think they're deplorable.
Harriet, thank you so much for joining us, and mind yourself, and I hope things get better in some respects. I hope there's no more bad news in the family.
Please God, and thank you, Damon, for listening to me. Good morning.
Good morning, Harriet. Thank you for that. A texter, how does a person get checked for the BRCA gene? If you could advise, please, Damien. The first port of call is go to talk to your GP. You can focus online. You can have a look and type it in online and talk about the testing. There's testing done in Crumlin. There's also testing done in St James's up in Dublin as well. They're the public places to do it. There's also private that you have to pay. But the first thing I would suggest is go to your GP, and also a lot of it's got to do with history in the family. We're back with a lot of your texts and comments next. Now, welcome back to the programme. Happy 24th birthday to Louise Gann from her father, Francie, and 2 children, Lexi and Jaden. Happy birthday. Now, just to say, there's a text from a person in to say there's a homeless man living on the grounds of the People's Park in a makeshift tent. Is there anything anyone can do to help this person? He lights a fire and he has a clothesline. Now we have a text in from a person. I'm going to read it out because it's quite long. I think we should talk about this because it referred to what Tony said about alarmist, scaremongering nonsense. Damien, while I would agree with the need to stop using so much plastic immediately, Ireland's a tiny country with a tiny population compared to other massive countries in the world who are not going to take any action to improve their emissions or waste. Ireland has less than 0.1% of the world's cattle population. Heaping more taxes on the people of Ireland is not going to save the planet, no matter how much the government spins it. There's thousands and thousands of acres of rainforest being cut down to gain access to the materials needed to make the batteries used in electric cars. There are several countries around the world who are each building up to 100 new fossil fuel-run power stations. People need to do a bit of research. I'm sick of being taxed out of existence in this country. Anyone who thinks Ireland is going to save the world are deluded. So there's a couple of things within that text. One is the idea that we are not all homogenous on this and we're not all fighting to save the planet in the same way. Secondly is the idea that we're too small to really make a difference. And then there's the idea of delusion. So I don't get a feeling from that texter that he or she is saying that climate change is not happening. So we have had those, including Donald Trump, and a very concerted effort by people over the years, in particular fossil fuel companies, who are basically trying to rubbish the argument, effectively using the same lobbying that the cigarette companies did as they started off in the 70s and 80s, saying that, trying to confuse the message. So, for example, we have a senator in the Congress or whatever bringing in a big snowball, saying that it's just snowed outside the White House, and we have this sort of thing. So we're trying to make a generalised statement from a particular example which is not scientific. The first thing is obviously the science is there, and the science has been proven, and the scientists have been talking about this for many, many years. So if we're talking about people discrediting that science and talking about people doing other research, that's one thing. Then you have to look at the size. Now, Ireland was the first country to ban plastics in terms of plastic bags, in terms of, I suppose, smoking. Not ban plastics, sorry, in terms of putting different taxes on stuff. And then you got the smoking ban. So we can make a difference. Now, in terms of the world's cattle population, our carbon footprint per person in Ireland is higher than many other countries. And a lot of it may be due to the methane that has been produced by the growing number of cows in Ireland. So you have to ask yourself, is policy working in the right direction in Ireland? What can we do about it? Because climate change is going to affect everybody and will be affecting everybody, and it's not going to go away. So are we willing to pay more to try and do something to stop it? And this comes down to taxes then, and comes down to people's understanding about this. So as I said, Tony texted in saying that it's alarmist. Other people saying that we should get windmills, should they work? Others then talking about climate change. A texter RT's climate change programme last night features loads of mights, maybes and ifs, led by Met Éireann, who can't forecast the weather in a week in advance, but they know what's going to happen in 2050. Looking for more money, government looking for more taxes. Cue a week programming about climate change. You couldn't make this stuff up. And that is from Eamon. You could make it up, yeah. Like if they weren't doing anything about climate change, people would be giving out saying, why is the issue of climate change not being highlighted? It has to be highlighted. It's worth highlighting. That's my view about it. Let us know what you think.